Hello and good evening, boys and girls. Welcome back to the mansion. Today is Specimen we're talking about, and don't worry. Oh, and in reality, again, don't worry. They won't all be Haunted Mansion related. It's just I have to get past the ones people don't really know a lot about, or at least know the backstories behind. So regardless, let's get back to the story. Tonight's Disney character you may not know, episode 5, is the loving bride, the one you all know, Constance Hatchaway. Constance Hatchaway, also known as the Black Widow Bride, is one of the many ghosts haunting the Haunted Mansion in both Disneyland and Disney World. During her lifetime, Constance married and murdered at least 5 wealthy men, as we know. She beheaded her suitors with a hatchet and claimed their wealth as a widow, before moving on to the next husband. Her husbands, in order, are as follow: Ambrose Harper, Frank Banks, Marquise de Doom, Reginald Kane, and the infamous George Hightower. It was through her last husband, one of the multitude of owners of the Haunted Mansion, that she came to live in that house, where she grew old and died unpunished. Her ghosts, as well as ones of her husbands, though not George Hightower, now haunt the attic of the Haunted Mansion. Originally, Constance's only appearance in the ride was as the one of the stretching portrait room. When the guests enter the room, only the top of the portraits are visible. It depicts her as an old woman holding a rose with a romantic smile on her face. As the room stretches down, the lower part of the painting becomes visible, revealing that Constance is actually sitting on the tombstone of her former husband, George Hightower, whose bust now shows that he was brutally murdered with a hatchet. However, in 2006, the attic scene of the Disneyland mansion was updated and the beating heart bride was replaced with Constance, whose ghost appears in a young form, dressed as a bride. The Walt Disney World version of the ride would soon receive the same addition. The attic is now filled by numerous dusty items she received as wedding gifts from her 5 husbands. No longer fearing the law since she's dead, she makes no secret of her crimes and recites twisted wedding vows while wielding her dreaded hatchet as the guests move past her, giggling at her own jokes. Her words are exactly, "We'll live happily ever after, till death do us part. Here comes the bride. As long as we both shall live, for better or for worse, I did, in sickness and in wealth. You may now kiss the bride." It's her exact words. Now, here we once again are to the infamous part of these videos, the Disney Kingdom comics. Constance is a major antagonist in the Disney Kingdom's Haunted Mansion storyline. As one of the few ghosts of the mansion who actually died on the property, she has some measure of influence over the spectral powers of the house. This allows her to permanently chop the head off of any ghost's ethereal body, a fate the captain, as we've mentioned in episode 3, I think, is eager to avoid. For that purpose, he sends Danny Crow into the attic to find his treasure instead of going himself. There, Danny comes face to face with Constance, who asks him to be her new groom, revealing that her 5 crimes were actually neither about the money or the men. She just liked weddings. Unfortunately, ultimately, it is Constance who defeats the captain by decapitating his ghost with her hatchet. When introducing Constance to Danny, Captain Gore reveals some details told to the reader in the form of a flashback, notably that Constance lived with her mother, who never knew about Constance's crimes. The captain also states that his personal theory is that Constance was killed by her 6th husband not long after the murder of George Hightower. This is, however, unlikely, given that Constance was shown much older in the stretching room. Yeah, it's a confusing, but technically the Disney Kingdom comics are canon to the rides. It's a bit confusing because some is canon and some aren't. Like the Dreamfinder comic, which I've mentioned in episode 1, is canon, but to a ride that no longer exists. Similar to how the Haunted Mansion comics are canon to certain mansions, but not all of them. Specifically, the whole George Hightower storyline, who, don't worry, we'll get to him eventually. But regardless, onto the merchandise. A wave of Constance merchandise has come out. There's been plushes, t-shirts, multiple pins, and so many others. Although understandably less products are made for her than the Hitchhiking Ghost or the Hatbox Ghost, seeing as they're much more popular than her. As in the name for video game, she appears in the online game The Haunted Mansion, The Black Widow Bride, where she has a noticeably beating heart like the previous brides. Probably an error of the developers, or possibly a deliberate will to retcon all the beating heart brides into having Constance all along. Yeah, if you don't know who the beating heart bride is, it's really fucking confusing. Sorry for cussing, but it really is, and I might do a whole different video on it. But in the wake, her skeleton can faintly be seen through her body in the title screen. In Epic Mickey, though, Horace Horsecaller asks Mickey to help him solve a mystery by searching evidence in the Lonesome Manor, which is funny because that was one of the very first names of the Haunted Mansion, I presume. The item is hidden in a chest in the attic, and turns out to be Constance's hatchet. When he gets it, Horace is excited, as this is the definitive proof that Constance, who used to be the lady of the manor, did kill all her husbands. Constance replaced the Beating Heart Bride, who was a major star up until 2006 in California and 2007 in Orlando. It is heavily implied that the old woman seen in the portrait in the stretching room is actually Constance, which was painted later in her life, though an early script for the attraction named this character Abigail Pate Cleaver. It has been suggested that this was an alias chosen by Constance to marry one or several of her husbands to avoid the him or them finding out that she had already been married before. The actor who portrayed her is Julia Lee, both in photography and production, but she is voiced by Kat Castrita, who I hope to get an autograph from one day. God, it'd be awesome. Though Constance never makes a direct appearance in the Ghost Post interactive video game, her presence is felt in the greater story, as evidenced by a conversation heard between the hitchhiking ghosts over the phantom radio about her, with Gus wildly swinging around a hatchet as they do. It also is very heavily implied that Constance is behind the agony advice section of the Grim Gazette, since the author makes frequent allusions to having multiple husbands who died under unusual circumstances. Constance appears in the short stage show at the Disney parks that was held as a hard-ticket event for the Haunted Mansion's 40th anniversary. The show was about her demise and shed some light on the subject, but was gleefully inconsistent with the stretching portrait, pretty much making it non-canon since she died young. Finally, when deciphered, her name means constantly hatching away. Hatching referring to her use of her hatchet. That was the ending of this video. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you didn't, I tried to make it enjoyable. There's not much else I can do. Episode 5 will be coming out soon, and I'm eagerly awaiting it. And since it's going to become a running theme, I'll make a little chin. The next man coming up on Disney Characters You Never Knew is going to be one of the brilliant men in the West. The Wild West, that is. And he is going to be the one man to be able to turn a crappy place into a gold maker. Come back real soon, why don't ya? Ha ha ha!